Thank you, County Carlow, and that's fine. Minister, my office has been flooded with families, with caregivers, teachers and principals. There are children heading into school, mainstream school, this September who have never had an assessment. How can schools properly prepare for those children? I have had a special education preschool in Carlow who has discharged a number for 2023. Now, out of 14, 7 are waiting for a DAT assessment. There are 4 to go to mainstream school who have never met a therapist. Never met a therapist, and Minister, that's absolutely shocking. Some of these children have already lost out on an ASD preschool placement because they have not had their assessment to date. They should be going to a special education school or maybe a special class within the locality, but again, without an educational assessment, they will not get a placement at this stage. So look, we're also, it's all on about resourcing too, and I have huge issues with that. Children who end up on mainstream, not suitable for needs, end up later battling to get allocated on an SEN or a place in an appropriate setting. Their needs will not be met. They just can't be met, Minister. I have been speaking to the HSE, which is CHO5, and the reconfiguration of children's services to Children's Disability Network teams have been faced with significant recruitment and retention challenges. The approved WTE staffing for the CDNT Network 1 is 22, but unfortunately there is currently only half of the WTE clinical staff on team. The vacant posts are physio, psychology, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists. Like these are so important. And Minister, as you know yourself, timing and early intervention is crucial for any child, and this is why I have to highlight this. I think we're actually in a crisis now. The current vacancies are having a significant impact on the CDNT, delivering assessments, therapy and intervention, in addition to implementation the process disability service model and providing training and support pathways to parents as well. That's another issue, Minister. The HSE has a national and international recruitment campaign for therapy staff. Can I just ask you, what is the status of the recruitment drive now? In the school settings, we are seeing the expertise of a psychologist being sought more frequently, and that's something that parents have been speaking to me about recently. There is now only one. There is only one at the moment in the CDNT team in Carlow, so it is physically impossible for them to reach on all of these assessments. NEPs provide educational, psychological support to all recognised primary and post-primary schools, but I am aware they do not maintain waiting lists, and the focus is on empowering teachers to intervene effectively with pupils whose needs range from mild to severe. They encourage schools. Now, this is something, Minister, that I thought was also needs to be, because I know schools are doing their best, but what's happening at the moment now is they're encouraging schools to use a continuing based assessment and an intervention process whereby each school takes responsibility for initial assessments, educational planning and intervention for pupils with learning, emotional or behavioural difficulties. Currently, our teachers are widely under-resourced, and this approach is massively challenging. I know that teachers can consult their NEPs psychologists should they need it, but there in reality is a waiting list because they cannot assess this support when they need it. When the children started school in September last year, I had one principal contact me and tell me about a child in junior infants who could not get an assessment. The school actually offered to pay for a private assessment in the hope that the family could get the supports they needed because it wasn't, they'd had to be looked at. So surely this cannot be happening. And just, can I ask you, I'll come back in again. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. On behalf of Minister of State Josepha Madigan, I'd like to thank Deputy Murnane-O'Connor for raising this issue, as it gives me an opportunity to outline the current position regarding special education provision. At the outset, I want to stress that enabling students with additional needs to receive an education appropriate to their needs is an ongoing priority for this government. I know that my colleague, the Minister for Special Education and Inclusion, will continue to work to ensure that all children have an appropriate school placement and that the necessary supports are provided to our schools to cater for the needs of children with special education needs. It is important to remember that the vast majority of children with special educational needs are supported to attend mainstream classes with their peers. These children are supported to attend mainstream classes through the provision of special education teachers and special needs assistants to our schools. To support children with more complex needs, special classes in mainstream schools and special schools are provided. This year, the Department of Education will spend in excess of €2.6 billion, or over 27% of the department's budget, on providing additional teaching and care supports for children with special educational needs. For 2023, the Department of Education has further increased the number of special education teaching and SNA posts in our schools. There will be an additional 686 special education teachers and a further 1,194 special needs assistants in our schools by the end of this calendar year. For the first time ever, we will have over 19,000 teachers working in the area of special education and over 20,000 special needs assistants. Together, we have almost 40,000 qualified and committed people in our schools who are focused wholly and exclusively on supporting children with special educational needs. The children will undoubtedly benefit, as is right and proper, from the educational focus these resources will bring to their education. Over the last 3 years, the Department of Education and the National Council for Special Education have introduced a number of strategic initiatives to plan for and provide sufficient mainstream special class and special school places. These initiatives are bearing fruit, with over 600 new special classes sanctioned at primary level and almost 300 new special classes sanctioned for post-primary level and 5 new special schools established over the last 3 years. Budget 2023 also provides funding for additional staffing in both the National Council for Special Education and the National Educational Psychological Service. Both of these measures will ensure that our schools and students benefit from additional practical supports from special educational needs organisers, NCSE advisors and educational psychologists. The special education teaching allocation provides a single unified allocation for special educational support teaching needs to each school based on the school's educational profile. This model has replaced the previous model of allocating resource teaching support and learning support to schools based on a diagnosis of disability. There are over 4,500 SET hours for mainstream classes allocated across schools in County Carlow, 3,175 hours at primary and 1,475 hours at post-primary. Additional teachers are provided also for special classes. The special education teacher allocation allows schools to provide additional teaching support for all pupils who require such support in their schools, and for schools to deploy resources based on each pupil's individual learning needs. The allocation gives greater flexibility to schools as to how they can deploy their resources to take account of actual learning needs pupils have, as opposed to being guided by a particular diagnosis of disability, and schools are guided as to how they should make such allocation decisions.
You get a chance to come back.
Okay.
Thank you, Minister. And while I welcome your response and the fact that there's €2.6 billion and it's over 27% of the department's budget, and that's important. And I also want to pay great tribute to teachers that work in the area of special education and, of course, our special needs assistants. There are over 20,000, who absolutely do an excellent job. But my concern is at the moment, and the reason I brought this up tonight, is the amount of children that are not getting assessed and that are actually waiting for assessment is a huge issue for me. I had a lady come into my office last week where she had to go and borrow in the credit union €1,000 to go to actually pay to get her child assessed. She couldn't afford it, Minister. And I feel it's unacceptable. And I speak with the HSE, and I've said it as my opening statement, about assessments and lack. And what I'm told is there's funding there, but it's recruitment. It's recruitment. Retention is the issue. We need to now look at helping people that are not in a position to help them give them to whether we get it done privately and help families and help children. Because while I welcome this and it is good and I can see the improvements in certain areas myself, we're also at crisis when it comes to getting children assessed. And I'm really concerned for the children, I'm really concerned for the families, but I'm also concerned that families now are going out to try and borrow money to try and get their children assessed so that they can be assessed going into school, and I don't think that's acceptable, Minister, and I think we really need to address this urgently. And I would ask that you would go back to Minister Jennifer Madigan. I also believe we need to look at Minister Norma Foley. I think we also need to work with the HSE, in particular in my own area, Carlow, Kilkenny, CHO5. I think this is actually where all agencies, everybody needs to work together to find a solution. Because at the end of the day, it's the children here that are really important. And again, I can only stress, Minister, early intervention is key to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And I was just going to go on and make the point in my initial contribution that each school can take account of the learning needs of children as evidenced by performance in schools, but also supported where relevant by information provided regarding the nature of the condition that a pupil may have. A process is available where schools can seek a review of their SET allocation by the NCSE, including the utilisation of their allocations. Detailed information on how the NCSE review process is published on the NCSE website. In relation to SNAs, the Special Needs Assistance Scheme is designed to provide schools with additional adult support staff who can assist children with special educational needs who also have additional and significant care needs. Such support is provided in order to facilitate the attendance of those pupils at school and also to minimise disruption to classes or teaching time for pupils concerned or for their peers, and with a view to developing their independent living skills. There are almost 100 SNAs allocated across primary and post-primary schools in County Carlow at present. Almost 239 SNA posts are allocated across schools in County Carlow. Almost 100 of these SNAs are allocated for mainstream classes, with the remainder assigned to special classes. SNAs are not allocated to individual children, but to schools as a school-based resort. The deployment of SNAs within schools is a matter for the individual principal and board of management of the school. SNAs should be deployed by a school in a manner which best meets the care support requirements of the children enrolled in the school for whom SNA support has been allocated. And just in conclusion, to highlight to the Deputy also that there are currently 45 special classes in County Carlow. Of these, 30 special classes are at primary level and 15 are at post-primary level. And over the last 3 years, 7 new special classes at primary and 2 new special classes at post-primary have been provided to Carlow. I want to thank the Deputy for raising the important issues which he's articulated, and I will convey her concerns to both Minister Jennifer Madigan and Minister Norma Foley.